Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Social Work Bubble podcast. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Laura, and I have my BSW and MSW and currently practice as a therapist in New York City in an outpatient mental health clinic. Before we get started, don't forget to like, comment, share, follow this podcast on whatever platform you're listening. Now let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about all things social work grad school, which is very, very exciting. As you know, I just recently graduated in May 2020 with my master's degree from Columbia University. So it's still pretty fresh in my mind, and I know it's a difficult process and applying and just going through grad school to graduation. So I'm hoping that today's podcast may be helpful to some of you. So grad school, I think the first question is, to go or not to go? I would personally recommend grad school for anyone in social work and wanting to pursue social work and potentially, do something in a supervisor, administrative role, program role. I would prefer, me personally, I think all types of social workers should have a license and potentially a master's degree. But of course, there's the financial barrier. There's the financial difficulty. There's student loans, things that are more difficult in social work because our pay doesn't exactly meet the needs of paying back student loans. And so it's an understandable, difficult decision for many people. I do think in an ideal world, I would definitely recommend grad school and getting a MSW for anyone in social work. But of course, people have different reasons for not being able to. So that's also understandable. But just in terms of opportunity, specializing, having your own practice, having more flexibility and autonomy in the field, I do think it provides that, as well as significantly higher income. So if you do decide to go to social work grad school, there are many ways to what that can look like. But I'm just going to talk about two general routes. So the first route is if you are in undergrad and you get your bachelor's degree in social work or your bachelor's of science in social work, that can often lead you to do an advanced standing master's program. So what that means is, okay, you already completed 4 years in social work education. So for grad school in an advanced standing program, you only have to do 1 year in order to get your master's degree. This is the program that I did. I did 2 years at community college and got my associate's degree in human services. And then I transferred into my junior year at a SUNY university, a 4-year school. And I got my bachelor's 2 years after that in social work. And then immediately after graduating from undergrad, I went right into grad school. So my whole entire college experience was 5 years long. There is also the other general route of if you went to undergrad but you majored in something else, like maybe you have a degree in psychology or criminal justice, or honestly something completely different. Maybe you have a degree in business, maybe you have a degree in something like that. That's not even really social work related. I personally think a business degree could be helpful in social work, but you want to go and do a master's program. If you're going into grad school and want an MSW but don't have a background in social work education or a different bachelor's degree in social work, then those programs are typically 2 to 3 years long in order to get your MSW. I do think also just because you get a bachelor's in social work doesn't mean that you have to or can do an advanced standing program. So we're going to talk more about this, but grad schools, when you apply to a grad school, you're also applying for the specific program that you want. So for example, when I was applying to grad schools, I was interested in being in New York City. So I applied to Stony Brook University, Fordham University, NYU, and Columbia. And each of the schools was a little different, but generally when we talk about kind of these programs, there was advanced standing, there was kind of just like the general program for people that was like 2 years long to get your master's degree. And then there was another program, I can't remember what it was called. It was almost more condensed. And so like it was like 1.5 years, I believe, because the classes also ran during the summer and winter breaks, so that way people could get their degree in a shorter amount of time. So keep that in mind too when you're applying for grad school. You're not just applying to get into the university, to get into the specific grad school you want to get into. You're also applying for that specific program. So when I applied to all the grad schools I went into, I had to check mark, I'm specifically applying for the advanced standing program. So if you get accepted into the advanced standing program, you can pursue that. If you don't, you can also then apply for kind of the general course and do like the 2-year slot. So obviously, if you have your BSW, doing advanced standing I think is more efficient. You're good to go. But I also had some regrets about doing advanced standing because it was only 1 year. And I'm sure all of you guys are familiar. I went to Columbia, and it was a school I was really excited to go to, and I felt like 1 year was not a long time at all. Like, it flew by so fast, and I do feel a little sad that it went by so fast. There were some experiences I feel like I didn't get to live out fully with just doing a year-long program. So those are all things to consider, just about like general grad school, kind of what that even looks like for going for an MSW. Now we're going to talk about deciding what school you want to go to. So like I said, I was mostly interested in the New York City area. Obviously, I said Stony Brook University. It's on Long Island, which is close to New York City. And there were a few reasons that went into my decision. One of them was I just wanted to get out of the area that I was living in. I'm from Western New York, and I think that's where I spent my community college time. That's where I went to my undergrad experience. That's where my family was. And during that time, me and my partner did 2.5 years long distance. We actually met at community college, and then we did the rest of our time of undergrad across the state from each other. So we were like 14 hours away from each other. And so that was really difficult. And that definitely was a contributing factor. It wasn't the driving factor and why I wanted to move, because I will say, you don't have to move for a partner. But after doing almost 3 years long distance, it was definitely a factor for me. I had been interested in moving to New York City. And when I was in undergrad, I had talked to one of my favorite professors and also my advisor. As it started coming around to that season of applying, of thinking about grad school. And I was talking to him and just about my options. And he basically said to me, he was like, well, have you ever considered Columbia? And I was just like, what? Like, I didn't really think that was an option for me. Like, it is an Ivy League college, and that was a really strange thing for me to hear. And so we talked about it, and he was like, give it a shot. I think you would be able to get in. And besides that, my partner he goes to Stony Brook, and I had visited him on his campus before, and I really enjoyed the program that they had. I really loved the campus. So I had become very familiar with Stony Brook. And again, it wasn't because my partner was there. It was because with all the times visiting him, I really fell in love with the campus. I got to know more about the social work program at Stony Brook. And for a short time, I was also interested in doing a dual degree in law to get my Juris Doctor. And so, which was a 3-year program that Stony Brook offered. So it was 3 years to get your MSW and also your Juris Doctor. And so for a time I thought about that, and because of that, I was really leaning towards Stony Brook for a moment. And then my other schools were NYU and Fordham University. So each of these schools, I remember when I first started out just looking at grad schools, I had this insane list. I made this gigantic Excel sheet of basically like every university in New York State, because I'm from New York State and I knew that I wanted to stay within the state. I didn't want to go out of state. It was too expensive. Not that going to Columbia was any cheaper, but I wanted to stay in New York. So I basically wrote down every single social work grad school in New York State. And one by one, I researched every single one of their programs. And then I kind of specifically said it. Then I kind of focused on New York City. But I still looked at other schools anyways. I looked at the University of Buffalo. I looked at, I don't even know. I can't remember now. I looked at Adelphi University. I looked at probably other schools. I can't remember. And so, yeah, that was the start of my process. I probably did a little bit too much, but I think it paid off because I found a few schools that I really, really was content with and I was really solid on because I did all my research. I really went through every New York State school one by one, so I was pretty thorough about it. Some things to consider for yourself, obviously, like I said, is location, but more than that is community. For me, moving to New York City was a big adjustment, and I feel like I've talked about this before. I come from a small town. I come from a very rural area. I myself am an introvert. I'm pretty quiet. I also have a lot of anxiety around other people. And so saying all those things and now saying I live in New York City may seem pretty contradictory. But it has definitely grown on me being here. But for a little bit, it was an adjustment. And those are important things to consider. Just how your personality meshes with the community, with the location of where you want to be. And also a part of that as well is the cost of living and what living options will be available to you. Will you be able to live on campus? Will you be able to do student housing? Will you have to get an apartment? What would that even look like? Do you need roommates? What areas are good to live in? And all the research surrounding safety, communities to live in, neighborhoods to live in, especially in New York City. So there's a lot that went into that. I remember when I was looking at my grad schools, and during the process for me, as I was getting accepted into these schools, I only applied to the 4 schools, Stony Brook, Fordham, NYU, and Columbia, and I got into all 4. But as the process went on, my top 2 were definitely NYU and Columbia. And I had actually registered for all my classes for NYU because I basically made that decision, and then I changed my mind, which ended up working out. But all of those things are important. We can't just go to a grad school because we like it, right? Because, it'd be so cool if I went there. We need to talk about practical life decisions. Like, okay, is it going to actually be feasible for you to go to this school and take out all these student loans and be able to pay it off? If you have to pay off these student loans for this amount of time, is that something you're going to be okay with? So, and then also, of course, the community, the cost of living, what your living situation is going to be like, and what kind of financial aid is offered to you. I will say this is something I learned while I was an undergrad. But if you're applying to multiple schools and you apply for financial aid or scholarships, you can use that to your advantage with the other schools. So with 3 of my universities, there were all of them offered me financial aid and scholarships, but obviously some more than others. And so you can use that to your advantage and be like, hey, financial aid office at this school I really want to go to. School B over here is giving me way more money in financial aid. What are you going to do about it? And so, schools want you, and you can really use that to your advantage. Honestly, even if it's just a couple $1,000s off, that's really significant. And so reminding yourself of that as well. Financial aid and scholarships is a big role. Another huge thing in deciding what school to go to is what kind of programs they offer. the first basic tenet of that is if you want to do online schooling or if you want to do like a residential campus situation. I had taken online classes in the past, mostly in community college, and I was not good at it. Obviously, right now during COVID, most everything is online anyways. And so that can be a difficult thing to think about now because most everything is online. But I guess this would now be more in terms of if you want to live on campus and do online courses and be a part of the campus community versus staying at home or staying where you are. I was not good at online courses. I didn't really thrive there. I really preferred a classroom setting and to be on the campus, in the buildings with the professors, because I felt more connected, I felt more a part of the community, and I just learned better that way. So that's an important thing to consider. There are some universities, particularly in New York State, that I'm thinking of. I'm not sure what other states offer, but there are some that are strictly online that really, really specialize in online MSW degrees. So that's always options for people, and I know, especially for people that are working, that can be a great option to, kind of work towards an MSW degree as you want to. Another thing to consider when you're looking at schools is your options post-grad. So once you graduate, once you have your MSW, what kind of options are going to be available to you? Do you want to be able to stay in the community? And this is something I've said before is I think it's good to go to a grad school where you want to stay there afterwards and live in that community and stay there after you get your degree because you've learned about the community, you've learned about the resources, you've made all these connections. For me, I had already built a caseload as an intern of psychotherapy patients, and I was able to stay on and work there. And I didn't have to have all this time starting a new job and building a caseload. And I was already familiar with all the community resources. I was familiar with what my job entailed and my role and how everything worked. And so also looking into what's going to be available to you after you graduate and if you want to stay in this area, in this community. I would definitely recommend, of course, going to open houses, visiting the college in person, doing the most that you can. I do know that a lot of research says that you're more likely to get into a university when they see that maybe you visited or you've kind of put in that effort, you've made yourself known to the admissions committee or, whoever is in charge of admissions. And so being familiar with that as well, because that can make a huge difference. You might think like on paper and on a website you really like this school and they have such a great program, but then you really get there and you kind of see the feel of it and you change your mind, and that's something really important to consider. Like we mentioned before, finding out what pathways they offer. So this is going to be something I talk about in a moment, but when you're in grad school you have a concentration that you're in. So we have a master's in social work, right? But part of that master of social work is you're specializing and concentrating in a certain field. So when I was getting my master's degree, my concentration was in advanced clinical social work practice, specifically when working with children, youth, and families. So my concentration was the clinical social work practice, and then my field of practice or the population I wanted to work with was children, youth, and families. And that shaped the courses that I took in grad school, because based on my concentration and the population that I basically checked I wanted to work with and I wanted to concentrate in as well, that shaped what classes I needed to complete in order to get my degree. So I would have some classes on child welfare, working with children, community resources for families and youth, juvenile detention, child protection, of all of these different things shaped around the population. But then a huge core in my foundation classes were around clinical social work practice, diagnosing, assessments, therapy modalities, research, things like that. So finding out what pathways each school offers, that stuff is pretty public information, right? So if you just go to the website of the university that you're looking at, they should have all that information. And they also, even if you have to email them and ask, they should let you know what kind of courses are part of that path. So if you want to concentrate in clinical social work practice, you'd be able to be provided with a list of courses of what that would entail, what your MSW would be made up of. And you want to make sure that they have the concentration that you want and that you feel would be practical for your career path. Another good idea is to reach out to current students or alumni. Colleges often set this up anyways, or at least the colleges I went to, where they want students to go there. And so they'll do what they have to do to get you to stay, right? And so if you reach out and you say, I'm really interested in talking to a current student, or maybe they'll even host some of these almost like mentoring or sessions for incoming students or potential students, you'll be able to talk to people that are currently experiencing it, that are currently in it, and also people that have graduated and alumni. So that's always something to look into. Obviously, LinkedIn is a great resource for this because you can search up people based on where they went to school. You can connect with other people, and you can get information that way as well. Because, of course, just like with anything, the internet and online and even going in person, it's all painted to want to get you to go there, right? To get you to apply. And so it's important to get real life input and stories from people that are actually experiencing it, right? To get a better, more rounded out view of what the experience will actually be like for you. Okay. And also an important part is what field placement opportunities are going to be available to you. So, most college websites have, and social work program websites have, a field placement or field practicum page to it. Some of them might not say all the places that they have students intern or fellowship at, but you could always, reach out to the field placement department, reach out to them, see what some options would be, see what ideas they would have if you were to take a certain path. And really kind of just take initiative in that way and really understand if this is something that you'd want to do. And I think it goes back to the community and the location too. So it's really just feeling out what's available into the community to you, what jobs and internships would be available to you, and is that a good fit? And I think another huge decision too is other degree options. So like I said, a big reason why I applied to Stony Brook University was because of their dual degree program to get an MSW and a Juris Doctor. I decided not to do that. To be honest, a big part of that was because it would take 3 years, which to get 2 degrees, to get a Juris Doctor and MSW is not a long time. But just for what I wanted to do and for what I plan on doing with my career, I thought, I'd rather not. So thinking about that as well, it took a lot of research to find universities that offered a dual degree program like that. Some universities offer very specific ones. Some of them have a dual degree in, business and social work. But something to note there as well is when you do a dual degree, not only do you have to get accepted into the School of Social Work, but then you have to also get accepted into the grad school, the other grad school. So, for example, if I were to go to Stony Brook and I were to do the dual degree program and get my MSW and my Juris Doctor, in order to do that program and to do my dual degree, I would have to apply and get accepted into the School of Social Work. I'd also have to apply and get accepted into the law school in order to move forward in that way. That would also mean I would have to study for the LSATs. I'd have to do everything I need to do to get into law school on top of what I'd need to do to get into social work school. So some big things to consider, and universities offer many different options for dual degrees. Some of them only offer very specific options. It's not like you can just pick and choose what kind of degree you want, what kind of dual degree you want. They really only offer specific options, right? And so that's where the research comes in, where it's not like you can just cherry pick, okay, I want a dual degree in social work and history. You can't really do that. Many times the universities will already have the dual degree options laid out for you, and you have to decide if that's a good fit for you or if you want to pursue something else. So a huge thing to consider there. So when we talked about specializing and having a concentration when you're getting your MSW, I'll just use the examples from when I was in grad school. So I said my concentration was advanced clinical social work practice. The other concentrations at my university were advanced generalist practice and programming, policy practice, and social enterprise administration. So when everyone would apply to this grad school, we'd all have to check mark what program we want to be a part of. I knew I wanted to be a therapist, so I did advanced clinical social work practice. The field of practice is less important, truly. And I don't know if this is the same for other grad schools. I think there were similar things. Some of the language might be different from school to school, but I do think there's like a population of interest or like a field of practice kind of thing where you would also choose that option. And it didn't shape the foundation of your courses. It would be able to shape some of the electives that you took, though. So the fields of practice at the grad school I went to were mental health and disabilities, children, youth, and families, international social welfare and services to immigrants and refugees, aging issues, workers and workplace issues, school-based and school-linked services, and contemporary social issues. So those were mostly like populations that people would want to work in. And I believe, I was going to say that might only be for advanced clinical social work practice, but I don't think that's true. So not only would you pick a concentration, but you'd also do a field of practice. But the concentration is really the more important one. So in terms of field placements, this is a big thing in social work, of course, because you have to do a field placement in order to graduate, in order to get your MSW. And this might be an entirely different podcast episode in itself, but I do want to touch on some things when you do a field placement and what that even looks like. So if you did get a bachelor's of social work, then you did do an internship in undergrad in the social work field. It, of course, is going to look different than doing an MSW internship, because as an MSW, you're granted a lot more privileges and freedom and independence because you're at a higher level, right? You have more specialization and expertise. So in terms of MSW internships, like we said earlier, when you're looking for schools, you can look in the community and see what's available. I mean, I was coming to New York City, so there's so many resources and agencies here. You know, for someone that, like I said, is coming from a rural area, it was just overwhelming how many community resources and agencies there are around, which was also great because I knew I had a lot of options. However, another important thing to know is all grad schools, all social work schools are all looking and trying to place students for internships at the same time. So even though it might seem like there's a lot of agencies and a lot of organizations in the area, also look at how many social work schools are in the area. Because like I'm in New York City, there's a lot of universities and colleges here. Everyone's trying to get every single social work student into an internship. And so even though there's a lot of community organizations, a lot of agencies, and a lot of field practicum areas, there's also a tremendous amount of social work students trying to intern. And so that was something that did kind of make that process difficult, because you were kind of fighting for a seat in a sense. So that's something to also consider, which just came to mind. So when we start looking at a field placement, when I was in grad school, when I got accepted and I registered for classes, I decided what school I wanted to go to, put down my down payment or deposit, whatever it's called. Down payment, that's not what it is. when I put down my deposit. My field advisor got in touch with me. So when you're in a field placement, you have 2 to 3 different supervisors. So my field advisor is my advisor that works at the School of Social Work. So they are the staff person that facilitates conversation and, keeps in touch with me to see how my field placement's going. They also did evaluations and would keep in touch with my supervisor, and they're the ones that gave me different options for places I wanted to be placed at for my field placement. So if I had any issues, I could also go to them for it. My field supervisor is my on-site supervisor at the actual agency. So that would often, for me when I was an intern, it was the clinical director at the clinic that I was a intern therapist at. The same supervisor I have now as a working therapist. And then sometimes you'll also have a task supervisor. A task supervisor is also a supervisor at the on-site field placement that you're at, but they kind of help you with the day-to-day tasks that maybe your supervisor doesn't have time for or isn't able to provide you those things. They can help with just the day-to-day. Maybe it's filing, doing notes, any questions about how anything functions in that way. And just providing you with things to do as well. So that's the difference there. So your field advisor will help give you and set up places for you to be an intern at. They'll set up the interview so you can get in touch with the supervisor and get an interview date and time. And keep this in mind. Interviewing at an internship can be difficult because it's something that's necessary for your education, and you might not get exactly what you want, but that's okay. And I think it's a tricky balance of advocating for yourself and for the population that you want to work with, but also knowing when it's okay to be in that space and to learn something new, right? Because I do think we can create change wherever we're at. If maybe we're not in a field that we want to be in. For example, I don't like medical social work. Saying I don't like medical social, I wouldn't be a medical social worker. When things get a little too medical, I'll give you some background. I started off as a nursing student when I was in community college, and I changed my major, of course, to social work. Just the medical aspect of things I didn't like. I found myself wanting to learn more about, emotions, psychology, that kind of thing. Family history. And so medical social work is just a little bit too, medical. Too this is not helping what I'm saying, but I hope you understand. And so even though I might be placed as a medical social worker when I know it's not what I want to do, or I might not like it, if we keep fighting for it or fighting for something else and we're not seeing any results in any other area, I think it's okay to say, let me give this thing a try. Let me see what kind of change I can create here. Yes, I might have difficulty with it. I might not be a huge fan of medical social work, but let's give it a shot. Let's do this. And I think it's really the perspective where sometimes, especially as an intern, when we're not getting paid and it is just for the purpose of our education, sometimes it's okay to do something that maybe you wouldn't otherwise try, right? Because you are still a student. This is still a learning experience, and you can choose what you want to do after you graduate. So maybe this is a time to try something you wouldn't otherwise even look at doing or even consider. But it's also hard because you do want to find a place that is a good fit for you. And so it is a tricky balance. And I do think just as much as you're being interviewed as the intern or the fellow, you can also interview them, see what the agency atmosphere is like, get to know the person that might be your supervisor, what the office space would be like, what your role would be like, and get a good idea of those things like we would for any kind of job interview, which, hey, could also be another podcast episode in the future. So those are some things to consider. When you are in the internship. So let's say, you've selected the place, you've been accepted to be their intern there, you interviewed well, and you're going to start. One of the biggest things I think is remembering that you are a student. And there have been times when I've had conflict with a supervisor and I've had to tell my field advisor about it. And they've really advocated for me and just reminded my supervisor that I am a student, I'm not an employee. I'm still learning these things. And so it's important to have that understanding because it can set the tone and the expectation, because we are all still learning. And, we're not working professionals yet, right? We don't have our master's degree yet. We're not going to do things perfectly all the time, and that's okay because we're students. But I will say this, keep an open mind and learn as much as you possibly can. That's not even within your role, right? So of course, when I was an intern, I was at an outpatient mental health clinic, the same one I stayed on to work at, and I was practicing as a therapist. So of course I did everything I could to continue to grow my knowledge on mental health diagnoses, on symptoms, on medication, on other community resources, on support groups, on therapy modalities, on practicing therapy, all about client populations and, cultural humility and understanding just my clients' different cultures better. But I also, was able to stay in touch with case managers at the clinic. I was able to speak with my supervisor, who was the clinic director, speak to the psychiatrist and also the program director. So things that obviously were beyond my role and scope as a therapist, but as a student, I still had the opportunity to reach out to them, and they would have a conversation with me about their role and their responsibilities, give me some insight on what that could look like. So using your student title and your intern title to your advantage to open up new learning opportunities for yourself in that way that are also beyond your role as a therapist, to see what other roles are out there specifically in your agency as well. And with that being said, creating a network and contacts for yourself if you plan on staying in that area post-graduation. If you realize that this is a position you want to stay at, or the place that you're interning or fellowshipping at offers you an employed position after you graduate. And this is what happened with me, is I really enjoyed my placement and I wanted to stay on and work as an employee. And I had become really comfortable with the community. I had gained a lot of knowledge on the resources and how everything functioned. And so for me, it felt like a really good fit. And I was really happy to stay on. And so that was something for me where I didn't have to start fresh. I didn't have to start from square one all over again. I already had built a network. I already had built some community and relationships where I was. And it was nice to be able to not have to sever those and not have to start a square one again. So I think that was also something useful for me to know. Generally speaking, grad school is incredibly stressful. There's many things that happen when we are in grad school, and everyone that, goes to school to get their MSW, we're all in different walks of life, right? Some might be returning students who are mothers or who have been in the field for 20 years. Some might be like me, who just went straight from undergrad into grad school. Some might not be from this area, right? They might be international students, or they might have moved across this country or across the state and have to adjust to the area. We might come in with our own mental health issues, with our own experiences, with our own stuff. And all of that impacts how we move through grad school and how we manage stress, and how we manage the work that it all entails. And so when I say that self-care and having some sort of balance is essential for thriving, I mean that to the fullest extent, because there was a distinct difference for my experience between undergrad and grad school, because in grad school I neglected my boundaries. I had a really hard time adjusting, and I couldn't really find balance. And I had a really hard time using my voice for myself and prioritizing my needs and my self-care. And I could see that play out, and I was exhausted a lot. I wasn't working as effectively as I could for, the first couple of months of grad school because I was still in that adjustment period. And of course, after I adjusted, I was thriving and I was doing really well in my classes and field work, but it was hard. And it took time for me to really learn and to kind of get back into that step of, time management, of caring for myself, and of really prioritizing my well-being as well. Because as grad students, we are all pulled in many different directions. And I think, especially in social work, we have this terrible habit of preaching self-care and preaching boundaries and preaching taking time for yourself and time management and finding balance. But we are such a stressed out profession and stressed out education, and it's really hard to actually implement those things into our life as much as we like to talk about it. And so I genuinely say that you need to prioritize yourself, because if you don't, you will see the effects of it. And many times it could be negative, right? And we don't want that. Grad school is an opportunity to thrive and to build community and to learn incredible things and to meet people that are, interested in the same things, in the same field, and really passionate just like you. And so it can be a great space for, success and for really, really starting your journey in social work. And so setting boundaries with yourself and with others, with your energy and with your time, is incredibly important, because not only would you understand your value and what you're worth, but other people will understand that as well. And it'll just facilitate that environment for you to grow and to really take root where you are. In a future podcast, we'll talk more about postgraduate stuff like jobs and licensure. But for today, I think, we'll wrap up about grad school. I know it was a lot of information. I'm kind of tired, so I don't know if I explained anything really well. But if you guys need any clarification or anything explained further, if we didn't touch on something and you have a question, always reach out. You can reach out on any social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Pinterest, I'm on Instagram at socialworkbub. So you can always reach out to me there. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have any comments or you want to share your experience in grad school, if you're currently in it, if you're about to be in grad school, you can comment, you can leave your experience, or just share this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. You can also check out the Social Work Bubble Etsy shop at etsy.com/shop/the Social Work Bubble, where I provide worksheets and activities for social workers and therapists and other mental health professionals. I hope you're all staying safe, and I look forward to continuing to grow together in the wonderful field of social work.